Salve Omnibus. I think the difficulty in making my case for monarchy is that it's not something which you can argue for under our modern utilitarian-based understanding of government and society. It can't be measured or reasoned, or counted into existence. It's not something you can plan out on paper like the Constitution, and it can't fit in with a cold, scientific worldview. In truth, monarchy is an inherently human idea. If you're looking for a list of economic and political reasons why a monarch would be that much more efficient than a republic, then I suggest you turn off this video. What I am going to do is assert that a monarchy, that system which Aristotle described as the one system of government where power is exercised for the good of all, and Ezra Stiles argued that, when conducted with infinite wisdom and benevolence, is the most perfect of all governments, is the one system of government which is most reflective of human nature. And by reflective, I mean that the expectations we have of the ruler are very much the same expectations we should have of ourselves. And I think the two philosophers who demonstrated this the best were Aristotle and Confucius. For them, the relationship between the individuals, their family and community and nation were all one and the same. Confucius points this out with his 5 relationships, that the relationship between parent and child, husband and wife, older and younger sibling, older and younger friend, and ruler and subject were fundamentally the same and operated among the same principles and standards. And because of this, the way a king ought to rule is not an abstract concept which is beyond human understanding, but it's something that everyone lives out in their day-to-day life. And I think understanding this allows for an ultimately more humane government, that you should treat the people who you rule over as if they were members of your own family, instead of as a resource to exploit for political power. And so monarchy, as the ancients understood it, was not inherently elitist. It operated in a sense that people understood it as it was played out in their own lives. Another aspect of monarchy which is inherently reflective of human nature is the way in which it is passed down. One of the most common criticisms of monarchy in the modern world is that handing down power from generation to generation is not a good way to transfer it. But I struggle to find a better way of doing it. In families, we want to pass down our values, our wealth, and our traditions down to our children. And in a wider societal sense, we try and do the same thing. We want to pass our values down from one generation to the next. So why should it be any different with the government? One interesting point of note is that by Aristotle's definition, a monarchy can never be a tyranny, and vice versa. A monarchy is rule by one for the common good of all, while a tyranny is rule by one for the good of the self. Now, to address the obvious criticism of how this lovely system of monarchy is supposed to be prevented from being a tyranny is a cultural and moral question, and ultimately I think that, regardless of the government, abuse and exploitation can best be prevented through a common understanding and practice of morality, and I think this comes back around to the relationship between ruler and subject being the same as that which we practice in our own lives. For any of this to work, you need an underlying moral framework for society to follow. And I think this is why passing power within a family is the best way, as it can ensure that these morals can be taught from birth to the future rulers, the same as we want to do with our own children. This is how we can ensure accountability for our leaders. So, I think I provided a good philosophical basis for why a monarchy is a valid and good system of government, and to anyone living before the French Revolution, this would have seemed perfectly obvious. To question the basis for why a monarchy exists would be the same as questioning why the sky is blue. It made no logical sense, and so I think the burden of proof doesn't ultimately lie with the monarchists. I posit it's the natural reflection of human nature. It's the form of government mankind is most comfortable and familiar with, and by virtue of its sheer age, it obviously worked. And of course, it's not just a reflection of human nature, but of divine nature. For what is God but both a king and a father? So the real burden of proof isn't on monarchy, it's on proponents of liberal democracy and constitutional republics. You have to convince me why it's a good idea to abandon monarchy. Explain why, if the idea of democracy is so inherent to mankind, why it's an idea that had to be discovered in parts of Europe during specific periods of history by specific people who were almost entirely came from one economic class. And why then monarchy was practiced by almost the entirety of humanity for almost the entirety of human history. I mean, what does it say about a democracy that it seems it can only take root when it's accompanied by violence and war? I mean, Clemens von Metternich said famously, "Whenever I hear the word democracy, I know a bloodbath is coming." How many nations have peacefully transitioned from a monarchy to a republic relative to the ones which underwent a violent revolution or had it imposed on them through invasion by peace-loving democracies? I mean, What is the overall point of imposing a republic on society? What gain does it actually bring people? Liberty? First of all, what exactly is liberty worth when it can only be brought with a mountain of corpses? And second, if democracy is supposed to make men free, then why have the most totalitarian governments in our history only taken power in states without a monarch holding power? And why have all the worst abuses of power you claimed wouldn't happen when we got rid of the king, nepotism, corruption, and disregard for rights and traditions, been multiplied in our democratic republics and not subtracted? Why is it that in the Middle East there wasn't a single violent revolution in any of the monarchies but only the republics? All in all, I think that the weight of history is decidedly against democracy being a good idea. And I struggle to find a single republic throughout history, aside from merchant republics like Venice or Novgorod, that didn't fail, while monarchies have shown that they can last ad infinitum. The Tree of Liberty may indeed need to be watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots, but no one talks about the countless innocents it also seems to need for sustenance, or that the fruit it produces has become unbearably bitter from all of that blood. To borrow a phrase from the recent film Silence, the reason one cannot argue for monarchy is not that the tree of monarchy cannot grow, but because of the Republicans have poisoned the soil. I mean, all it seems to me is that the Republicans want to do to the nation what taking away the father does to a family. Now, all this is to say that I do think a republic can exist, but if the society were to operate under a traditional understanding where the individual, family, community, and nation are all one and the same, it would look a lot more like a monarchy. Diabana.